Let's talk about the RG505 as being one of the better or best value systems that you can get on the market today. This is actually a redo of a video I did, which is pretty successful when I started this channel about 2 months ago, and I didn't know what I was doing, and it was pretty garbage. So I want to take a minute to review it now that I actually know how to present a little bit better. I have a little bit better equipment, and I know how to edit a little bit better. Not much better, but a little bit better. But in general, this is RG505 that I bought used from Goodwill. Goodwill online. There's a number of Goodwill sites that you can find out there. I like buying stuff, but I don't like spending a lot of money. And I try to find stuff that is used or lightly used or something that I can easily repair. So I found this, bid it up to about 70 bucks, plus about maybe about $10 for shipping. I usually use FedEx, and so there you go, probably about 80 bucks or so with change, 80 something dollars. I got a pretty decent system. I added a little bit more because I got a specific card to go in here. I think this is a 512 gig card. You can go smaller. I wanted to put CD images on here. We can go into that a little bit more, but that definitely sucks up a lot of space. But in general, this is a 505, and when you buy stuff from Anbernic, the first two numbers is basically the screen. So 50, 5-inch screen, and then 5 at the end is the CPU generation, if you will. So 5 and 6 are the Androids, and they run the Android operating system. The 6, for example, is the newest one. There's a 556, which is I think it's almost $200. But first of all, it's beautiful. Second of all, it's so new that there isn't a third-party OS, and I'll go into that in a minute, to support it. You're stuck with at least as far as I know so far, you're stuck with the operating system that it comes with. I like to replace the operating system with something that has been put together by the community. So 5.5 is a 5.5-inch screen, 6 is the latest version. So 5.05 is 5-inch, which is what this is, 5-inch screen diagonal, and the 5th generation, which is shared number of other handheld systems. And there's a few OSs out there. This has GammaOS. I like GammaOS. I didn't like it. This contains the front end Unisoc, and it's basically a front end for all your emulators, and it packages it together. That's actually what you're looking at here. The back end is all Android, but the front end is here. You can have other Android applications on here, and for example, you can see I have DuckStation, I have Emulation Station as a front end in case I wanted to, and I dabbled with Emulation Station. That's my personal favorite. Just to let you know, there's a RG353, which is another system I had. I had a 353 and I had a 351, and they run great. Those run Linux front end, so you can run external custom operating systems that don't come with the system that are Linux based, like ArcOS is a good one. And another one is GelOS or Gelos. That's another operating system which are good. There's like 3 or 4 really good ones out there, and they run Linux with Emulation Station as the front end. This just happens to be a specific skin that comes with it. But I digress. Let's go back to the base system. But as you can see, this I have multiple operating systems out here. And I have the different emulators, including LimeOS. I have Ether SX2, that's for PS2 emulation. DuckStation, for example. But then I got YouTube on here, YouTube Music. I'm signed in because it has the Play Store. You can't load up everything because it detects it not as a phone. I think it detects it as a tablet. So a lot of the applications that are keyed to being a handheld phone will not download. I'm sure there's a way to get around that. Anyway, I digress. Let's make this a little quicker. So told you about the name and how I use it. It's one of the best handhelds that I have. Again, I had a 351 vertical. I have a 353. In fact, right here, where is it? Oh, here you go. Here is a is this one? Yep, it's a R36S, and it actually works really well. Let's see if I could turn this on for you guys. There you go. And this is how it normally comes. But it's a real good system. I bought this on AliExpress. I think it was like 30 something dollars. I think it was total $40 total, which was shipping, or less than $40. And then I just bought this for another $6. And I totally suggest it because it's very handy. This won't run anything past DS or PlayStation 1. As soon as you start loading up anything, even PSP, it really bogs down. Anything lighter than that, below Sega Saturn, I mean, even Nintendo 64 systems run really good on this system. But this one is much more powerful. That runs Linux, this runs Android, so anything that's Android, like I said, for YouTube, and you can get your email on here, it runs good. Touchscreen, that is not a touchscreen, but it literally, all of my systems that are in here that I like. In fact, I'm kind of a collector and kind of a hoarder, so I like loading everything up and getting all of the scraper front ends and box art and videos. I like to get all that. Like, for example, if I go to Game Boy, and I'm not a huge Game Boy Commons connoisseur, you'll see all the box art is loaded up in here. I don't like the scraper. I said this before, I think the scraper needs work. I like using anything that, like Emulation Station, that uses greenscraper.fr website, which is a French website, which is fantastic. In fact, I whenever I get a bunch of systems in and I do them, I give them something on Patreon. I give them at least $1 or $2 because I'm scraping the system so much and I'm so impressed with what they do. So I try to contribute what I can when I can. But I used it all to play all of my games, and battery life runs really good. I literally plugged this thing in for 15-20 minutes, and it went from 20% to, it was to say 69% in here. So it runs quite well. GameCube emulation runs surprisingly good, and I'm using a specific emulator, but I think this is a Dolphin. MMJR2, and it runs very well. Well, I haven't hit it with a system that it hasn't run flawlessly. Now we take it up a notch and we bring it up to Wii, and it does work. It needs some work. Some games bog out, like Mario Kart. You get some frame drops in certain areas. Believe it or not, the Super Mario Brothers Wii kind of like has a hard time. Super Mario Galaxy in some parts. Plus, you have to use the pointer, the IR pointer, and you have to emulate that. And I like emulating that with the touchpad. And so it takes a little tweaking and a little configuration. So if you don't want to do that, Wii might not be for you, but it's a good system. Like the fighting games, Tetsunoku versus Capcom, it works very well. Rayman works very well. So I like it. It's a good system. GameCube runs very, very well. Of course, anything that is older than that, Sega Genesis, for example. Game & Watch. I love these old school LCD sort of pixel or predetermined LCD screens. I don't know the exact term for it, but again, it brings me back to my childhood in the early 80s. Late 70s, early 80s. Television, of course, one of my favorite systems. Lynx, Jaguar guy, MAME, a bunch of, again, 80s and 90s arcade games that I play very well on here. Neo Geo on MAME runs really, really good. Final Burn runs very well. Master System, Nintendo 64 runs very good. DS runs really well. In fact, I like the way that you can manipulate the dual screens. You could have one screen and then have a button. I think this is, no, I'm sorry, I programmed it here to R3, I believe, which flips the screen from lower, upper and lower. And I think this one, L3, I might have this reversed, switches between the type of how they align the screens, whether one's bigger than the other, when they're side by side or they're on top of each other. I could flip through all of those depending on what game I play, and this one kind of makes one primary, one doesn't. And it supports touch also for this the lower screen, so that works great. Neo Geo CD, they run great. NES obviously runs wonderfully. All the retro arch, like the overlays, work well with this. So if you're familiar with RetroArch, you can put all the different overlays. Magnavox Odyssey 2, that may be a little bit old for a lot of you guys, but that runs very, very well. PS2, a bunch of games that I have in here. I've run a few of them. Obviously, the Final Fantasies run good. I ran Katamari, seems to run fine. I ran God of War 1, seems fine. Ico ran fine. Haven't run Shadow of Colossus yet. I know that'll really tax itself. So far, so good. All right, so I'm going to try God of War 2, and I'm going to try Shadow of Colossus next. PSP runs perfectly. In fact, this screen is pixel for pixel as good as the original PSP. So I think it was designed for that, to emulate the PSP screen specifically. This is an OLED screen, so it runs very well with HAP joysticks and everything else. So very well. PSP minis. PlayStation runs perfectly. Sega Saturn. This is the one that I need to work on a little bit more. I want to get this one running better, and it does chug. The frame rate drops down, so I really need to tweak this to get this running. In fact, this is probably the one system that I do want to actually run well. I do have a Sega Saturn downstairs, but I don't have a optical drive emulator in it yet. I'd rather not get one if I don't have to, but that's going to be my pet project, is getting the Sega Saturn working 100%. 32X, perfect. Sega CD, perfect. SG-1000, it's perfect. SNES, perfect. Super Graphics, TurboGrafx CD, works great. Vectrex, again, it's something with the frame rate drop. It's the emulator. I think it just needs to be tweaked a little bit more in order to get the Vectrex running right. Not a high priority system for me, not like the Sega Saturn, but definitely want to get that done as a completionist. Virtual Boy runs great. Wii, I already talked to you about that. Color Swan worked great, or Wonder Swan Color works great. 3DS, there are certain games that run fine, and there are certain games with a lot of 3D where you can really see it really start to chug. I use Lime 3DS is what I'm actually using. So there are certain games that run good, and there are certain games that it really has difficulty. And all the Ataris, 5200, 2600, 7800, ColecoVision runs great. Although just like the Intellivision and the ColecoVision, and then the Dreamcast runs surprisingly well. As I said, Game Gear runs great. Game Boy Advanced, Game Boy Advanced, and Game Boy Color. And let's go to Game Boy Advance. There's a lot of favorites here. The way it works is, if you click into Library, for example, there you have all of your systems. You could change if it's a list view, or you can have a list view like that with the screen giving you details. You could also switch it so that it's a grid view, which, depending on what I want to do. Why can't I click on this? There it goes. It just gives you more of almost like a gallery view, if you will, the grid view. It works well. But the way it does is there is no favorites. Like Emulation Station gives you a favorites collection or tab that has all of your favorites for all your systems, and this system does not. You have to have your favorites, and you click on your favorites in here, and you can pick them that way, if you will. It's specific to the system. Or if I go out to the main system, there's your favorites, you click on that, and it's the same screen that I was in. Now, what you can do is I use widgets, and widgets are basically shortcuts. And so I have one for Emulation Station. I have one that I specified in here for my current game. I had San Andreas PS2 was running on here. And then basically these are all of the ones that I like to play fairly often, for example. So Let's play that. Let's play that one. There you go, Dungeons and Dragons. That's a Game & Watch system that I used to play when I was a kid. So it's a good system. I do like it. That's how I use it. I replaced the OS with GammaOS. I think it runs great. I totally suggest that you do it. It's a little fiddly because you have to unlock the bootloader, the Android bootloader, to accept another bootloader, a non-Anbernic bootloader. Once you do that, it's not as hard as you think, but you need a computer and a cable in order to do that. Obviously, I put a SD card because I think it's 120 gig in here, and I put 512 SD card in here. And I always suggest using a name brand or a trusted brand. So the front end, Digesho, I always say that wrong. Basically, it's fine. It's functional and runs good. My only issue is there's little issues with the front end, like the favorites, for example, and the scraper. So the hardware, you have R1, R2, L1, L2, pretty standard. A lot of people I hear online, they complain they don't like the placement of these. So for this horizontal form factor, it works good. You have the Hap Effect joysticks, for example. I'll put the stats here for the Android system and all the memory. Pretty straightforward. I mean, like I said, everything runs flawlessly up to about GameCube. Wii and 3DS, it really starts chugging. And certain PS2 games, I've noticed that it takes a lot of tweaking. And by the way, for GameCube and Wii, you have to change the renderer to Vulkan rather than the standard one. And once you do that, it seems to work well, although you do have an occasional crash. And then DS works fantastic. So anything from DS and lower for handhelds works great. Now on the back, the screen is an OLED screen. On the back, there's nothing on the back. You get the rubber bumpers, which honestly, you know what these really do? They keep it from sliding across your table. Otherwise, if you didn't, I think this thing would be like a freaking hockey puck on ice, and it would slide across. And of course, if you had it upside down, the joysticks prevent it from sliding. So you don't really use this for ergonomic reasons. You're really using it to prevent yourself from breaking it. You have your speakers here, which are serviceable. They're okay, but you also have a headphone jack up here, and you also have Bluetooth. So I have yet to plug this into a Bluetooth headset. I'm sure it would work fine. Here's your back button, and here is your basically go back to what I was doing. I'm sorry, this is takes you right to the Digesho front end, right? And then over here is your volume up and volume down. So it's a great system. It works well. I like it. I like everything about it. There you go. Turn it down a little, and of course you could turn it down here. So this is a Game Boy Advance game, obviously, but just wanted to show you. Look how good that looks. So if you want to exit out, you hit the button. It takes me right to RetroArch, which is the larger back button. And of course, you see how it rotates. It's got a microphone here, and then here's a light. There you go. We'll get to something a little bit more in depth. We're already 20 minutes into the video, but I hope you enjoy. Thank you.